So hey everyone, and in this video we are going to learn about prop drilling. So prop drilling actually refers to the process of passing down the props, that is different properties. Like my name is Harshal Jain, so from one component I want to share it to my child components. That is from a high level component, that is a parent component, to a deeply nested component through intermediary component. That means a parent would be having a child would be having a grandchild, a grandchild would be having a grandchild. So there would be a nested levels of components. So that do not actually use the props themselves. For example, I as a parent created a prop named as Harshal Jain, which will be used by my grandchild. So all the components in between won't be using that. The grandchild would be using that prop. So all these components in between are actually just passing on the data. They are not using the data. I'll explain that more briefly with some example. But yeah, you need to understand that's exactly known as prop drilling, when unnecessary components also receive the data and they have to pass on to their child components. That's exactly known as prop drilling, and this is not a concept, this is actually a problem. Okay, but still I'll explain you with one more example. I'll be drawing a few figures so that you understand it better. So guys, for example, I'm just going to say my every component, for example, is, let's say, inside app.js. Okay, so I'll just say we have app.js file, which has, suppose, a file like inside app.js. Suppose I am saying we have a component. Okay, I'm talking about components, but yeah, you can take it as pages also, home page, about page, any page or any component. It's all same, right? Pages are similar to components. So suppose we have a component, I'll just name it as C1. Similarly, suppose app.js also uses a component named as C2. Similarly, suppose app.js uses another component named as C3. So we have, suppose, three components here, and suppose C1 has a value of name. Okay, so name, suppose we have declared our name as HJ here. Okay, so suppose our name we have defined here as HJ, right? So we have defined our name as HJ into the C1. So suppose we have a component below this named as C11, and suppose we have a few more branches, and inside this we have one more nested components C12. Similarly, we have one more component named as C13, and suppose here we need to just print name. Okay, suppose we need to get the value of name. Suppose we are going to console log name. Suppose we want to print this value inside C13. So what we have to do is, the prop drilling term simply means we have the value of name here declared, right? So we would pass it on to C11, then we would pass it on to C12, then we would pass it on to C13, and in C13 we are actually using the name. Okay, so what's the problem here is, it's fine for C13 and it's fine for C1. Okay, but what about these between, the components in between? Okay, so let me just draw it with yellow. So what about these components in between? So they are getting data which is unnecessary, and sometimes you might forget what data you have passed in between. Sometimes you erase the data and there would be lot of consequences, right? So it's always not great to have prop drilling. So I hope now you know what's prop drilling. Drilling simply means from higher parent, that is from the parent, you are passing on data to its childs, and subchilds. Okay, suppose the most inner one, that is most deepest child, is using the value whatever you have passed on. Now the intermediary childs are getting data unnecessarily, right? These data are these children, these components are getting data, that is name, which is unnecessary, which is not required by C11 or C12, but we need to forward that to C13. So this is a very big issue. It's causing a lot of you can see, you need to write more lines of code, and sometimes you might cause problems. And suppose one more example is, suppose you have defined name here as HJ. Now suppose you want to use HJ here. How would you be using this? So there definitely there is one problem here. You won't be able to share it directly. Okay, So for that, what you can do is you can actually use context API. Later on, we learn that. But yeah, right now, suppose if you want to share from one component to another, that means in same level. That means they are not branched together. You can see they are in different, they are C1 is a child and C2 is also a child, but C2 is not a child of C1, right? So they are not connected. They are only connected via app.js. So what you can do is you can define a variable named as name here, and then you can pass it as a prop to C1. You can also pass it as a prop to C2, also pass it as a prop to C3. Whenever there is a change in value of name, you can get the value here also, okay, easily. But the problem is, again, if there are multiple components sharing props like this from one level to another, it's very difficult. So let me just give you a code example also so that you can easily understand this. Okay guys, so first of all, I'll just create a fresh project. So I'm just going to name my project something like let's name it as context, because later on we'll be understanding context. Okay, so I'm just going to write npx create react app, and I'm just going to name it as context tutorial. Okay, so later on we'll be learning about context API, and we'll also learn about a hook named as use context. So for that, I'm just creating a normal project. Okay, so let's complete this, then I'll come back. So now our project has been created. We'll just open this. And guys, here you can see we have a normal app.js. I'll just erase everything from here, and we are going to say we have a few subcomponents. Okay, we have a few subcomponents. How we are going to decide that? For example, we have a folder here for components, and you can just assume that we have different pages also. You can apply the same logic, but let's assume we only have one page app.js. Instead of this, you can watch my routing video. You would understand about routing, different pages, home.js, about page.js, and contact page.js. You would be creating different pages, right? But right now, let's assume we have app.js, and this is the main page. Inside this, suppose we have a few components, and we are going to use prop drilling here. So here I'm just going to say that we have a component named as c1.js, and similarly you might have some c2.js or other components. I'll just say RAFCE here, and suppose here also you have another component named as c2.js, right? Similarly we have c11.js, right? Similarly we have c12.js, right? So right now I'm just going to say c11 is a child of c1, c12 is a child of c11. Okay, so let's write, first of all, define them. Okay, so I'll just write RAFCE, and then RAFCE, and here also RAFCE. Okay, so right now I'm just saying that here what I want to show. I want to show C1. Suppose I want to show C1. Okay, I would just show C1. So for example, we have value of name here. Okay, we have value of name here. We'll just create a hook, and let's say we have a variable named as name, and I'm just going to say we have used it, and I'm just going to pass my name like this. Okay, so I'll just say my name is Harshal Jain. Suppose this is my name, right? So what I would do is I would just pass my name here. So this is actually known as passing props to next component. Okay, so I'm just saying that my name would be passed to next component. Okay, so that is the child. So I'm just passing it. Okay, I'm just passing it, right? Similarly, I can pass one more thing, that is set name, which I can also pass set name also, because later on if you want to set name, you would be passing that, right? So I'll just pass set name here, right? So I've just passed both of these. Now what I can do is inside C1, suppose if I want to get that, okay, so I would simply say I want to get name, and also want to get set name. Okay, suppose I want to get that. I think I've named it like this, right? So what I would do is suppose I want to get the value of name here in C1. Let me just check if I'm getting or not, then we'll later on pass it to C11, then C12. Okay, so right now what I'm saying is in app.js I want to just show C1 component. Right now let's assume that we only have one component, that is C1 component, and just forget about C2 component. Okay, I'm just talking about C1 component, right? So here you can see we have C1 component, and now what we have to do is we have to simply go to terminal and new terminal, and I would just start this. Let's see how it works. So guys, you can see that it's loading, and there is again a problem, use state is not defined. So this is the problem with use state, so you need to just import it, and then I think it would work properly. So you can see, yes, C1 is having name as Harshal Jain. Suppose what I'm saying is we have a button which changes our name to something else. So we would just say which changes our name to instead of this, I would just change my name suppose to Virajan. Okay, so set name inside this, I'm passing Virajan. So if I click on this, so you can see name has been changed to Virajan. What exactly has happened is I just pass set name to this C1 component and it easily changed it. Okay, for example, now instead of this here showing name here, what I can do is I can just copy this, and here itself I'm just sharing it again, and here itself I'm just copying this, and now what I'm saying is I'm passing props to C2 also. Just import C2, you can see that it's imported. Now what I'm saying that if someone presses set name Viraj Jain on C1, name must be reflected in C2. That's exactly how we are passing props, right? I think yes, that's exactly we are passing props. So if I just reload first of all, so you can see initially name is this. If I click on this, so first name is changed into app.js, then it's sent to C2. Okay, so how the structure here exactly works is I would just again draw a diagram for a better explanation. So what have I done here is I would just say that we have app.js, right? So here we have app.js. It has two components. One is C1, second is C2. What I've said is in app.js I've defined a variable that is a state as name. Okay, and here suppose if I said name is Viraj, and in C2 if I am now trying to print name, what would I get? I would get Viraj. Okay, so initially suppose if it was Harshal, and later on I said that name equals Viraj, so what it would do, it would first of all change the value in app.js and it would be sent to C2. Okay, that's how the props value would change. It's good, you can see I can easily manipulate and get the value of prop. But suppose we have a lot childs here. For example, we have C11, we have C12, and suppose here I want to get my value of name. Here I want to get my value of name. Let's try to use this. So here we had C1, right? Here we had C1. Inside C1, let's ignore this now. Let's ignore this now. And I would also say we don't need C2 right now. I'm just going to explain directly with C1. We have C1, we have passed values to C1. Okay, what I've done is I've passed values to C1, and here you can see we have C1. Inside this, I would just say we have C11, and I would just say that name equals name and set name, and I would just pass the props to C11. Okay, now who is C11? This is C11. So in C11, I would again pass the values of name and like I would again pass the values of name and set name to C12. Okay, so again I'm just saying that to C12 I'm just passing these values. Okay, so C11 has got what? Name and set name function, so I'm just passing it to C12. Okay, so now in C12, suppose C12 also might had some other child, but for example, right now I'm just assuming that it only has two childs, that is app is having C1, C1 is having child C11, C11 is having child C12, right? So we are here C12. Okay, so here I'm just going to say just import name and set name, right? And here guys, suppose I want to just print the name. I just want to print the name, or I want to manipulate things. What I can do is, you can see that it's giving me C12 and Virajan. What I've said is inside app.js I simply called C1. So here you would see inside app.js C1 is called, right? C1 is called and properties are passed to C1. Inside C1 we didn't do anything, we directly called C11. That means we just pass the properties of C1 to C11, that is the next child. Now inside C11 we again called a new child, that is C12. So you can see inside C11, if I go inside C11, we didn't do anything, we just passed the data to next, that is C12. Now C12 has the value name. So you can see that it's a very long procedure. If C12 requires value name, it needs all these parent components also to take participation. These parent components are also required, although they are not manipulating the value of name, they don't have any purpose of having name, but they are required for passing the data to next child. That means C1 is passing data to C11, C11 is then passing data to C12. Suppose there are more subchilds, so there would be a very big problem. Okay, so this is actually known as prop drilling. You can share props like this and you can manipulate props like this. That's what I told you. You can just use set name here and changes would be reflected here. This is good, but this is very problematic when you have a lot childs. Okay, so to fix this issue, we actually have context API. So in the next video, guys, we are going to learn about context API, and also we are going to learn about use context hook. Okay, so that's it for today. I will see you in the next one. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye.